All right, hanging out with Jesse Palmer, one of my favorite quarterbacks. Let's say one of my favorite quarterbacks, a longtime friend. And now we get to talk a little bit about a few things. I know we're going to get into College Colors Day. We're excited about that. But before we do that, as we come into the college football season, you've been around the sport so long. What still excites you the most? Like when you're coming into a year like this?
For me this year, I think first off, great seeing you too. What makes it exciting for me is that I don't think it's as obvious this year with respect to the national championship picture. I know every year we're used to talking about Georgia and Ohio State and Alabama. But I think Michigan's a team this year people should keep their eye on based on the fact that JJ McCarthy's coming back. They have the experience at the quarterback position and with an offensive play caller and Sharon Moore. And then there's teams on the periphery at Texas and Oklahoma, a USC. It could be other teams from the Pac-12, Florida State, teams that can make noise. In the last year here of the college football playoff with 4 teams, I think what excites me, obviously, is the great games we're going to see in the pageantry, which I think makes the sport so special. But I think there are more unknowns and maybe some more question marks coming into this year than maybe we've had in years past.
Doesn't that, though, Jesse, speak to why, as much as we keep talking about what college football used to look like, when you look at the future and you look at college football playoff expansion, you're mentioning a lot of teams that may not be the best from day one of the season to the end of the season, but during the course of a playoff run, much like we see in the NFL, they could go on a run. And Texas could get hot and win a national championship. Doesn't that sort of speak to why the future of college football could be bright with playoff expansion?
I think so too. At least to make things a lot more interesting once you get to playoff time, because you're right. We've seen teams in the past peaking at the right time, entering in, much like Ohio State did in the first year of the college football playoff, and of course they ran away with it. Winning a championship, beating Alabama in a semifinal game that no one thought they could, and then beating Oregon in the big game. The thing I get excited about too is we're sort of in this era where, the best players and first round draft picks are opting out of bowl games, but you expand the college football playoff. A lot of those NFL draft prospects are going to be playing late. We're going to see the best players in the sport playing the biggest games late in the season. So I really think it's a win-win for players, and it's certainly a win for us as fans too.
Until you said that, I honestly never thought about the win for players. But when you talk about scouting, which is such an inexact science anyway, for teams to be able to get a better look of iron sharpening iron in high pressure situations, it also feels it makes like it's going to make the job of NFL scouts figuring out who can transfer to the next level maybe a little easier.
Well, it's certainly you'll get a more thorough evaluation. I think you'll see more good on good, like you said. And there'll be some key matchups every playoff season where there's NFL prospects, all-American caliber players going head to head. And it's sort of the intangible thing that scouts look for in players. How do they play in the biggest games of the year when it matters, when championships are on the line? So I think all the way around for everyone involved, I think with expansion, I think it's going to mean a lot. And it's going to really benefit a lot of people.
Now, one of the teams that's likely not going to be in the college football playoff conversation, but we seem to talk about every day right now, is Colorado, largely because of Deion. Now, I'm sure you saw Tom Luginbill had some words about the overall talent there. Deion's clapped back to it. I guess when you separate all of the noise that's happening around Colorado, what should our realistic expectations be for Deion and for the program this year?
Well, I think certainly there is going to be more talent on the field. I think when you bring in guys like Travis Hunter, Alton McCaskill, guys like that, I mean, at certain positions that they are going to be better. Now, is that going to translate into wins necessarily consistently throughout the course of the year? I don't think that's a reasonable expectation, but I think from the talent gap is going to get a lot better for Colorado moving forward. I think Deion did an outstanding job in terms of his hires at offensive and defensive coordinators this offseason as well. Prime's a great motivator. And so it'll be interesting. I mean, we'll see week 1 against TCU, just how that looks. But I think for anybody to think Colorado's competing for a Pac-12 championship, that's completely unrealistic. And from a roster top to bottom with a bunch of new faces running new schemes, how fast do they gel? How much chemistry does this team have? They're going to face a lot of adversity early, but no doubt because of the personality that is Prime, that's why we're watching Colorado and talking about them. That's why they hired him. We're talking about Colorado, and you just mentioned it. They're not competing for a national championship, but all of a sudden they seem more relevant. And that's the benefit of bringing someone in like Prime.
That's such the NBA argument, right? Like relevance versus greatness. Sometimes you just need to have guys that make you a conversation piece. But what's tough about it in the college football landscape, the SEC well, everybody does, right? You start looking at the coaches that are at the top of the SEC. I'm looking at a team like Georgia that has gone through tremendous emotion over the course of this offseason. And we're just sort of booking them into the college football playoff. Like when you start talking about the best of the best, the coaches and the programs in the SEC, is it fair that we just constantly presume that Georgia and Alabama are going to be there at the end?
Yeah, and I honestly do, and it's partly because of those coaches, but part of the reason why teams like Georgia and Alabama and LSU and Ohio State have sustained success year in, year out, because of recruiting. It's because of the talent they're consistently bringing in. And when you're at Ohio State and you lose Justin Fields and you replace that with a CJ Stroud, or you're at Alabama and you go Tua, Mac Jones, Bryce Young. I mean, that's why these teams, and you're doing that at every position across the board. That's why we pencil them in. Now, there's a little more attrition, obviously, in the SEC because of the schedules. But, looking at Georgia particularly, you take a look at the talent they have on the field, the head coach, the work they put in the offseason, and the schedule. It really does line up. Carson Beck will be one of the more influential players, I think, this season. I think he's extremely talented at quarterback. I think he's a first-round talent with respect to his physical attributes, but there's question marks because we just haven't seen him do it as a starter against top-level competition, which makes this season fun to watch. But there's a reason why we always have Georgia, Bama, Ohio State year in, year out reaching the playoff, and it's because of the head coach and because of the talent.
And that almost, look, I don't want to be Debbie Downer here. The season's starting, everybody's excited. But when I look again to the future of college football, that makes me think about the Jimbo Fishers, the Josh Heupels, the guys that right now have prominent programs that are on the rise. But realistically, or I shouldn't say on the rise, they're very good. But realistically, year in and year out, most of those programs, like we're going to have a ton of programs in the SEC and Big Ten in an expanded world that have big name coaches, big name programs, lots of money, and they're competing to be the fourth best team in their conference year in and year out. Like that just feels, Jesse, like a wild difference in the way that we have to start perceiving success and failure.
I think with Jimbo and I think with Josh in those two cases, I think you get the ball rolling. I think that's the key for them. And certainly at Texas A&M, we know all about Jimbo's recruiting because that's at the end of the day, that's the key. It's not the X's and the O's. It's the Jimmies and the Joes. It's the guys on the field that are going to have to be able to go compete and win games against Alabama and LSU in the SEC West right now. Tennessee's a good example. They won 11 games a year ago. Josh Heupel's got, I think, the 16th ranked class in 23, but he's got the 6th ranked class now in 24. Winning breeds better recruiting. And those are examples you're seeing it to maybe give them an opportunity where there is a bit of a changing of the guard. I mean, certainly programs like Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama look like they're here to stay, but it's those programs just underneath. If they get something good going and they can recruit up, maybe they can win a lot more consistently. And then you get a little bit more parity at the top.
You've mentioned a lot of programs, but you haven't mentioned Michigan, which I think is like against the law. When we talk about college football, we have to squeeze Michigan in. A hamburger for 3 games. I don't know, Jesse, how to make sense of the world we're in right now because the rules are ever changing. But when you look at Michigan, does all of this Harbaugh suspension, does it lead to any sort of distraction for this team, or are they simply, in your mind, too good to let any of that get in the way?
I think it's too good. It kind of reminds me of a few years ago with Ohio State when Urban Meyer got suspended for the first couple of games, or he wasn't there. Ryan Day took over and they just rolled everybody. I remember them beating TCU. During that stretch, for the stretch of games Michigan has, they're just too talented of a team. That's a team I think is in the national championship picture yet again. Question is, can they take the next step? If anything, it might motivate the locker room to kind of feel like everybody's out to get us. No one's given us a shot, and they use that as motivation down the road. Once they start the season 3-0 and they get into their conference slate and they're trying to make an example of people. I mean, that's really what I could see.
You were on some talented teams in Florida. The whole world was talking about Swamp Kings. Did you watch it? Like, were you into it? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, so I binged it, and it brought back just a ton of memories, honestly. Obviously, I wasn't there during that stretch, but the success they had kind of reminded me of what was happening in the 90s when Steve Spurrier was our head coach. And I think that the best thing that documentary did, I think, was demonstrate and explain the pressure and the expectation in Gainesville to win and to win championships. Based on the success Steve Spurrier and the foundation he built, that's what Urban Meyer was really fighting against and sort of what fans expected and wanted. It's not okay to win a game by 10 points. Doesn't matter if it's Alabama. Fans expect points. They expect you to win with style, and they expect national championships. They don't want to hear facilities as a hurdle. They don't want to talk about any of that. I enjoyed the documentary, but I think that was the best thing that it really sort of established with fans at home.
Well, you mentioned fans. One of the best things about the entire college football season are the fans, and they're part of College Color Days. Tell me about it. Tell me how everybody can get involved.
Yeah, really excited about this. So I'm working with CLC and we're celebrating the 19th annual College Colors Day. It's going to be Friday, September 1st. And College Colors Day basically sets the tone for college football fans all across America, anywhere around the world, to show their school colors and their pride in their team loud and proud. It gives everybody a chance really to fan out loud. So for example, I'll be wearing orange and blue this week. We've got a huge game Thursday night against Utah, everybody knows, and I get a chance to sort of rock that throughout the week. And I'll be posting on social media about the colors, right? Fanning out loud for that, to really sort of just in time for the college football season to get to explain and represent your school and the pride you have for the school. And you can get involved in the social media discussion online in the conversation with the hashtag College Colors Day. Fans can also, by the way, go to www.collegecolorsday.com for a chance to win 2 tickets to the national championship game in the college football playoff in Houston, Texas. So this is a lot of fun. It's the best time of year. So it gives everybody an opportunity to show their colors.
Always good hanging out with you, my friend. If I don't get an invite to be your assistant for the baking championship shows this year, we might fight, but I'm always rooting for you. Thanks for hanging out with me, brother.
You're going to have diabetes quick. All right, brother.